Weaponized news, which I watch fairly regularly. It's something I picked up on watching George Galloway. George Galloway has a sort of childish woo, 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 imbecile, woo wooing at the showers about him when it comes to things like Eastern women being hanged for being accused of sex with German soldiers during World War II. It's not that that's not misconduct, but when he uses the stories, they're not proven. And it's obvious what happened. He's a sandbagger of great standing. They played Nosferatu's game. Weaponized News did too. Simon, could be Simon Sharma. He played so much Nosferatu's game. They go looking for what they call Mason handshakes. Well, Gail Burstyn said she told her brother I had written to her. He said, He said, Jimmy who, like Nosferatu who, Natanya who. That's their Mason handshake between them. She was a darling of Israel who went to Bryn Mawr. And Weaponized News and George Galloway, the Sandbaggers, all of them have played Nosferatu's game. They've gone pettifogging, gold digging for absurd signifiers that were impinged on the persona's experience. And they produced a hottie, a really beautiful girl who fell in love with me, or at least convince me she did. And I was in love with her. They treated it as though they're protecting her at Oxford for her war crime. They treated me as though I had slept with a German soldier because she was a virgin. And that was evil in Paul McCartney's Cloak and Dagger show. We don't have research journalists anymore. We have politicians posing as research journalists in these little clubs of playing Netanyahu's game. But we don't have research journalists anymore. I remember after JFK died, there was a terrible desolation about the homilies that were given as you were driven by a Dallas policeman through the sandy alleyways of Texas, and the diminishment that affected our society from the loss of his intelligence and leadership. He had a heroic inclination to keep out of Vietnam, which was wizened by his conversations, I believe, with de Gaulle. He made quite an appearance at his funeral. But there was no research journalism. It was like people saying, if you dare to ask any questions related to evidence or understanding, we will say we will not play your game. We will not play the game of research journalism. In other words, we won't ask why, who had possession of the rifle. We won't ask that, no. That would be playing the game of research journalism. And the same terrible desolation comes over from Gaza. It will always be the tragedy of the individuals, but the timeline is now shifted in the bag of sand that we call time. For the dead and gone, how are they so different from the Trail of Tears? And the bigger idea of martyrdom looms over all. They're playing that Netanyahu game pretty far and wide. but there's not any inclination to allow for independent journalists to tell the stories. It's not to find the pictures and to establish the whereabouts. It's crazy tragedy, sad, and there's feedback loops from the front there back into our society. We have Israelis slitting their throats at defenders of Palestine in American society. I was attacked and tortured by Netanyahu's Starlight. But weaponized news won't play the game of research journalism. They're too busy looking for Masonic handshakes between me and Michael Todd, Fat Man and the Little Boy. And they know everything, and they always knew everything, and they diminish themselves by pretending that's not true. But they put on a Wispensky and peep show into what they know by gaslighting techniques. It's really very pathetic. They call the arch Sandbagger Max Blumenthal the world's greatest investigative reporter. The arch Sandbagger, the person who navigated Gale bursts into safety in that horrible attack of the 80s and 90s. I mean, they should award him Himmler's pince nez as a token of Her Majesty's esteem. It's ludicrous. And if you get into the idea of what do they not dare know, that's perfectly obvious. They do not dare know that John Lennon pulled a Houdini. They do not dare know that the image of Gail Burson in Seattle Center proves that Lennon pulled a Houdini. They do not dare know that the image of Gail Burson on a 1979 record by Robert Fripp proves that Lennon pulled a Houdini. He was a superstar among superstars playing sleuth in Hollywood with the master of reality show. And that's the way it worked. They didn't leave it to chance that their program and plan for in the works for 100 years would just happen to go right because he just happened to go out that night when they brooked no expense to make sure that everything was in play. If he yawningly decided that he would stretch his legs that night, that's not how it operated. Lennon was Houdini. He was involved in the great reality picture show. He was the same soundtrack system on Revolution Number 9 that made The Exorcist. It's an international society of hogswash that's promoting media as nightmares come true. We didn't get the better of this system of promoting the ruthless and the cruel, and we don't have the bullshit detectors to realize when we're blanking something out. Let me give you an example of this. Who had possession of Oswald's rifle? Blank that out, right? We automatically blank that out. We don't want to. No. We won't answer that question. We won't play that game. And there's no bullshit detector that goes off and says, wait a minute. If we deny the question who had possession of Oswald's rifle, we're not research journalism. We're not allowing research journalism. No. We don't have a bullshit detector over our own blank out. Well, in a way, George Galloway and Weaponized News, as much as I love them, are symptomatic of almost the hallmark of the inability to bullshit detect your own blankout system. And it's a lost cause. They're not going to. They will not bullshit detect their own blankout system. No, they won't. No, don't. We're not going to play your game, is what they'll say.